Food is fuel for your body, your mind, and definitely your sport. But let's face it, nutrition is confusing, and the expectations on girls and women to be thin and have a six-pack are exhausting. If you've ever been frustrated with your body, confused about nutrition, obsessed with eating healthy, or guilty when you don't, underate, overate, or overtrained, and overwhelmed with all the pressure, then this podcast is for you. Nutrition can be easy. You can take control of it, but it might start with letting go of control by asking for help and making a change. I'm Lindsay Elizabeth Cortez, sports dietitian and owner of Rise Up Nutrition, where I empower female athletes to overcome nutrition concerns and perform at their highest level, to stop being confused by all the mixed or harmful messages, and finally have confidence in your body as a fierce, fit, and fueled female athlete. Hi, everybody. We have a really special guest today on this podcast. She's actually a former client of mine, Dana. She worked with me over the summer and the fall. And then as much as I absolutely love Dana, I always have to say goodbye to my clients because she, accomplished her goals and she's been good on her own. So I'm really excited to talk with her today because it's been a few months of her kind of on her own. I'm excited to chat with her today about where she is now and talk about her experiences with nutrition, both before and after working together. And a little background on Dana. She's married with 2 children. She's a collegiate head coach in the sport of gymnastics, and she herself is an NCAA National Champion. There's a lot more that I could say about Dana and her accomplishments, both in sport and professional career. They're very, very impressive, but I do want to focus on Dana just as a person and her more intimate experiences with nutrition. So Dana, it's good to have you here.
Thank you, Lindsay. It was an honor and a privilege to be able to work with you, and you really changed my stars. So I'm very, very appreciative and grateful for our experience together.
Yeah, me too. And it's so exciting to catch up because it has been a few months since we last spoke, but I'm sure we could go way back, but I kind of just want to start with what brought you to me in the first place. What was going on in your life, your experiences with food specifically, that kind of last year, last summer, last spring, before we started working together? What was your relationship with food like before we started working together?
I think what it was included an unawareness to some really bad habits, mindsets, belief systems that honestly, until I did your program, didn't even recognize that that's what that was. I know that I had some really tough stuff going on in my life, and I felt like I was potentially leaning toward the wrong tool to be able to find some type of peace. And what I recognized was that food wasn't the answer to feeling better, but it is the answer to feeling better when you know how to do it right.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
It does. And let's just provide for some people listening, what were some ways that you were using it in the wrong way then?
Thinking, oh, well, if I, have this chocolate, I'm going to just feel better. Or I'm going to, for example, I'm not a drinker, right? And so when you have people that go, well, I'm going to just escape from reality because I'm going to go, go drink. That's not my style. That's not what I do. But I think that possibly one of the coping mechanisms was going to the jar of peanut butter, going to chocolate and things that aren't terrible for you, but I was using them in the wrong way. And what I think I recognized is I had been using them in the wrong way for a really long time. And I think, when you have been a very, it doesn't matter how high level of an athlete you've been, high, low, if you've been an athlete, especially in a sport like gymnastics, where your whole life is really being judged, it's subjective, you have a tendency to be very caught up in what people think because you're being judged. You're under a microscope of constant constructive criticism. But the mindset also is, but this is for my better. This is to make me better. This is for my good. And there was such a toxic culture in gymnastics about food. And I didn't realize it because I had never even thought about it when I was a teenager. I never had a problem. I never had an issue. And I think when I got to college and I was doing a lot of comparison to others is when my mindset really shifted. And so, what I didn't want is I have a 16-year-old and I don't want her going 30 years with the mindset that's going to hurt her versus help her. And what you helped me realize so many things. I know we'll talk about it, but yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. So for you, probably some of those bad habits with nutrition did start in college as a collegiate gymnast then.
I think so. I think that I know so. Yes, I believe, and a lot of it I think stemmed from comparison. And I'm a 5 foot 6.5, gymnast, and all my teammates were 5'1", 5'2", 5'3". So it was a very unrealistic view, or I would say distorted, because what I believe is I think everybody in their own way has disordered eating patterns. I don't think everybody has an eating disorder. And I believe that that's really true. And so, you ever hear the phrase like, when you're sick and tired of being sick and tired is finally when you're going to change something? That's the definition of insanity, always doing the same thing over and over again and thinking something's going to be better. Well, I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. I am, a mother, I'm a coach, and I just felt like your program, your system would be a fantastic tool to say, what is there to lose? Honestly, by diving in. And the one thing you said to me in the very beginning, you said, I invite you to join me in this. You said, are you committed from start to finish? Because if you don't do the homework, you don't do the sessions, you don't do the small group type work, it's really not going to give you the same kind of rewards and benefits that you're looking for. So I made a commitment to you. I'm all in. I wasn't perfect by any means. At the same time, what I learned, like I still have it, like carbohydrates fuel and fat protects, and and protein builds and minerals and nutrients, and it just allows me to be free. And there is nothing better than being free from a diet mentality, a diet culture, food rules. Like you helped me recognize the ridiculous amount of food rules I had in myself. And man, when I stepped outside my comfort zone, I allowed myself to do the things that needed to happen in the 12-week program we were on. I was skeptical. I was like, oh, I don't know. And it worked. The key is it's the first steps. Having been away from you for a couple months and kind of being on my own, I'm starting to be a lot stronger in recognizing when I'm going down the wrong path versus the healthy path.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
The other piece is I have to be really careful is I'll hear another mom talk about a situation with their teenager. And the first thing I want to do is be like, don't do that to your daughter. Like, stop. Because I had nothing but supportive parents. This did not stem from my mom and my dad whatsoever at all. This stemmed really from me being a type A personality and wanting to be perfect and comparing myself to others and just striving for excellence in certain areas of my life trickled into I want to say obsessiveness, but definitely way too much time and energy spending on the wrong things.
Yeah. Yep. Wow. That was so much. Thank you for just diving into it all. And I love how you mentioned though, that first speaking to me last spring, the very first step was kind of just an awareness of, wait a second, maybe I've been doing this wrong with nutrition for the past, 20 plus years. And no, it didn't stem from your parents. And I love what you said too, that a lot of people probably have disordered eating, maybe not eating disorder, but a lot of people do because our world is just surrounded by it. This, how we talk about our bodies, how we talk about nutrition, all the diets that are constantly being pushed on us and spoken of, it really confuses the heck out of people. And, whatever first led you astray as a collegiate athlete in comparisons and kind of got you maybe down the wrong path with nutrition, 20 years later, it was the same story. It was, my body's not good enough. Let me try and control my food to fix something about myself. And as you kind of expressed, you would go to food to fix something and it wasn't the solution, leaning on it for more emotional reasons. And you were sick and tired of doing that. And our first conversation was probably a bit of a shock, maybe, because as most people approach a nutrition conversation, they are expecting the typical, what do I eat? Show me the meal plan, right? I'm curious, were you somewhat expecting that, or?
I think to a degree it was going to be, here are the steps and here's what you eat, when you eat, and a lot of that, because that was the history of, if I did a figure show once, and I had hired a nutritionist specifically for that figure show. And for the figure show, it was such a concentrated, disciplined venture. I don't regret having experienced that, but what I didn't realize is that is not sustainable. So you go back to, what did I feel? How did that look? And it was from a mental perspective, it can hurt you if you don't have the right mindset. And I think when your programming helped just go back to mindset, and I loved some of the work we did in asking yourself questions and taking a deep dive in, who are you? What are your goals? And even to this day with my own team, the mantras, the positive mantras is that I am strong, I am confident, I am beautiful, I am enough. I think that we know that what we think about, we bring about. And so it's so exciting to be able to take some of the things that you taught me in the program and be able to apply it to basic life, not to dealing with nutrition, but just life. I think that some of the work we did on, some of the negative things we say to yourself, and then stopping and saying, is that true? Like, is that really true? Like 100%, do you know if that's true? And by believing it's true, what is that doing to you? And it wreaks havoc if it's not used in the right way. And then the big question when it's like, but what if it wasn't true? And you go, it's freeing. I'm free. So when you learn that carbs are good, and eating a piece of toast and having, avocado is good, and stop thinking that any food is off limits, you just have this very liberating moment, if you really understand it, that takes you to a whole nother place in your life. And my husband notices it. My kids notice it. I notice it. I use it for, I stay in my lane as a coach. We have nutritionists that work with our student athletes, but it is wonderful to know that my perspective, because of my worldview being so much healthier today, is about food freedom, is about eliminating diet culture, is eliminating that any food, is okay if you're smart. And so, yes, I'm very, very satisfied with, where I am today and how much I've grown. And the beautiful part, you said this too, it's not a race. This is a marathon. And this is not something that's going to just, you're going to click a switch and it's like you're fixed. It's something you get to almost be on a journey with. And we talked about that there is no perfect way to do it. It's not about perfection.
And that's huge, coming from a coach and somebody in the sport of gymnastics, where, perfection is so much centered around that sport. And it's so huge to have you take that outlook and say, it's not about perfection. It's about just using food to nourish your body and feel free with it, and have it be something that helps you. It's not about making it perfect.
Exactly. Well, who defines perfect?
Great question.
Yeah. So for me, I believe that, and I kind of shared this the other day because we're celebrating, girls and women in sports right now. And it's kind of like, women, we need faith and we need confidence. And your confidence comes from your faith, and your faith it brings you more confidence. And we should never stop striving for the will to get better, the will to excel, the will to try to achieve something. And that can go in with your nutrition and fueling and all those things, in addition to your career and being a great mom and being a great athlete. I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. So for you, being a coach as well, how does this year, like you said, you stay in your lane. So, you're a coach, you're not the nutritionist for the team, but do you notice a difference in how you can talk to your your girls and your athletes just about showing up to practice with energy? Or, do you have any of those conversations, and is it different than some conversations you had in the past?
It's conversations about fueling for energy, fueling so your mind is sharp for your academics, fueling because that's how you're going to recover better, fueling because your body needs energy and it gets that energy from one source, food. And I think the other piece is I have a lot more confidence in sharing that, there is one thing we will do the rest of our life, and that will be eat. At some
Yeah.
point, you're going to eat. And why not have the confidence and the tools and the strength to be able to do it where you're not driving yourself crazy, that again, I go back to the word freedom. I think that your program and our experience and the whole deep dive that I took personally gave me food freedom. And it's changed my life for the good.
Yeah. What are some of the things that your family has noticed? You mentioned your husband notices it. You have two children. What are some things that they've noticed about your behaviors around food, or just how you can show up for them as a wife and as a mom?
I think, and I'd love for them to answer, there's more flexibility in trying different things. There's less complaining on, well, I don't want to go to that restaurant because I don't want to have that kind of food. It's like those things are eliminated because now I really have an education to know it doesn't matter where we go. It doesn't matter, what style of food. You have the freedom and the ability to make a great choice that's going to be satiating. And I think the other big piece is guilt and shame has been like ridden. I think that there's a big piece of food shaming, body shaming in the sense when you're not in a good place. And that's not something people like to be around, especially your family. And I don't want to be the source of that either. I'll tell you the big thing. I'm more aware of when I see people do things I used to do. And I say to myself, good job, Dana. Like you've gotten past some of that. And the biggest thing, like I said earlier, is you have to be careful of wanting to not correct other people because it's really not my place sometimes. My place is to more so share the good pieces of my personal growth. It's like, let me tell you how beautiful my baby is, not how ugly someone else's is. And I just think that it's very important to focus on what are the experiences I had. And if someone invites me to the conversation, I'm just much more confident in knowing that I'm not going to be sending them the wrong direction. If someone doesn't invite me to the conversation, I just mentally keep, reminding myself of the little things that I learned through your programming that help me sustain for the rest of my life.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I love how you just said that too, of, even though since you're kind of enlightened, so to speak, you found that food freedom and you're sort of enlightened in how nutrition really can help you live a better life. And so now you can really point that out in other people when they're being held back by the same rules and restrictions and torment that maybe you once were. But it's not necessarily your place to then go correcting everybody else, but just being aware and knowing, hey, let me be a role model in this space. And that's what's so powerful about you. Just one, as a person, you're a leader as a person. And then, in the positions that you have as being a coach, being a wife, being a mother, that you can influence other people by just being yourself and just being a role model in that. So it's really wonderful that, you don't have to, I always say, you don't have to like start a parade saying end diet culture. I mean, it's great if you do, but you don't have to. You just have to be you. And that's inspiring enough.
What's really great is I follow you. I follow some wonderful nutritionists that are out there, specifically attacking nutrition in gymnastics. And they're really doing a great job in breaking down that diet culture, that you can't eat this, you can't have that, you can't, what is this going to do to you? And that's really important for our sport because I think that it's showing change. It's showing that we're being progressive. And I mean, there are some really important ways to have peak performance when you are an elite athlete and the demands on our bodies. What is it? what it takes to not only do the sport, but then also be alive and awake and aware for academics and for social life and all those things. It's all interconnected. And so I see a change happening in our sport, which I think is fantastic. I also will tell you that as a head coach, as a coach, as a mom, I love to empower our women. And I definitely love to model and motivate. And so if you're going to model and motivate, I think you need to be educated. I think you need to know what's important. And I think you need to be able to know what your lane is and how you can make a difference, especially when you're invited to the conversation.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's beautiful. So I want to touch on that whole peak performance concept too, because I think that's a misunderstanding that a lot of athletes who hear about food freedom, or they might hear about this concept of intuitive eating, and they might think, well, that's not for me because I'm an athlete and I need to have structure with my diet and I need to be rigid. I was wondering if you could speak to that a little bit more, and how in your experience, because also, I do want to point out you're quite the athlete yourself. So for our listeners, I mean, Dana still hits it hard in the gym and she still trains her body and she's keeping up with these girls that she's coaching just as hard. So I'd love to hear your input on, can you achieve food freedom and peak performance at the same time?
I absolutely believe you can. I also believe that there's seasons in our life. And when you are in a particular season of life, sometimes the demands require a different amount of input. And I think that we can get really lost in the fact that if I'm going from 2 hours or 3 hours a day of training to 5, 6, 7, 8 hours a day of training, your nutrition can't look the same because there's no way that you can sustain the energy, the power, the velocity and the things that you need to do not only our sport, but any sport. I have a son that plays golf. One of the greatest private lessons he had was about on course fueling, because you play golf for 4 hours. You don't have, a high sugar donut meal right before you go on the golf course and think it's going to sustain you for 4.5 hours. So I like that even my 14-year-old is learning, what kind of fuel do you need to have? What kind of cheese and crackers or peanut butter, whatever it may be. And hey, you've been now 3-4 hours. You need mind. You need energy for your mind to work, for you to make decisions. I think specifically it's something that is a tool you need to learn. And then, for example, when you're doing a figure show, there's some dieting to that. And I say dieting, I would say discipline. How about that? A different level of discipline, that if that's what your goal is trying to achieve, there are some things that can help you do that. But it doesn't mean all things are off limits or anything is off limits, that you can do everything within reason. I guess I don't know if I'm answering the question exactly, but peak performance, there is a beautiful, I guess you could say, puzzle to it, because the other piece, Lindsay, everybody, but everybody is different. It needs different things. There's no one toolkit way of doing this. If you're a sprinting athlete, you're a long-term athlete, you're doing this, it just completely changes the game. Here's the great part. You don't beat yourself up. If you don't do it right, you go, oh, well, what did I learn from that experience? And the other thing I loved about your programming is, through some of our modules, we had to try some different things.
Yes.
I won't say that some of those things didn't scare me to death. I was like, I don't want to do that. But I was like, well, you committed before you started this program to go all in. Lindsay asked you, are you going to go all in? Even the little thing we did with the spaghetti.
Yes.
That experiment, I was kind of going, oh, I would have never thought that could have opened my eyes to looking at spaghetti completely different. Does that I hope that.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just going to explain to some people listening, I definitely challenge my clients and I make them do things that they're like, why are we doing this? And that's why I ask for a commitment up front of, are you going to be coachable? If I tell you to do something, are you going to do it? And I don't want an I'll try, because trying means you're not going to. I want a yes or a no, quite frankly. And when you say yes and you commit to doing it, we're always going to learn something about it. So a little spaghetti experiment with Dana is what changed how she looked at pasta forever. And that's exactly what she needed. There's always a reason behind something, as silly as it might seem. And, I want to hit on this part too, Dana, which is, you're speaking so highly of this program now, saying it was amazing, food freedom, all that. But there were moments in working together where you were hesitant, you were scared. Where do you think those hesitancies of, okay, I'm going to eat this food, where, in your opinion, where does that really stem from? What were you really scared of?
Fear. It generated, the base of it was fear, and fear of, what if this doesn't work? What if this does this to my body? What if this makes me feel a certain way? It was a fear, really, probably of the unknown. And I think that was what I had to break through, is, what's it going to hurt if you try this? What's it going to hurt to just allow yourself to truly enjoy this delicacy and not then feel guilty or feel like you got to go run 10 miles because you did it? And I think that's kind of what stemmed from the fear of what if. It was like the fear of the unknown. And man, what I realize now is managing and going with the flow of the unknown is truly where you become a champion in whatever it is you're working on. It's true.
I love that. I mean, is that something you've experienced in before in your life, or are you just saying that kind of after this experience with food, overcoming those fears and uncertainties?
I think it's an evolution over time of where I am in my chapter of life, my age, my experiences, my worldviews, what's important to me. I think that, where, like, I think you have to say, okay, here I am now. What would I write a letter to my 15-year-old self? And what would I try to tell my 15-year-old self now that I'm where I'm at today? And I think that really helps me realize, wow, I definitely would want to share with my 15-year-old self is, don't do this to yourself, or don't put these limitations on yourself. Don't talk negatively about yourself. Don't have a distorted view of what you see in the mirror. Like, how can you help those things? But then I say, but wait a minute, what happened should have happened because it made me who I am today. So that's that shame and guilt thing again. Is there's no shame and guilt that back then I didn't understand what was going on, especially because now I'm at that age where I go, I forgive myself. Wow.
Which is so amazing.
Oh, so wonderful. And the other thing is, it just makes you a better mom. It makes you a better friend. It makes you a better coach. It makes you a better everything because of the self-evaluation and the internal look you're allowed to go and really take a deep dive. I guess that's how I think.
It's beautiful. So we're not gonna, tell our 15-year-old self what not to do, because we can appreciate how far you've come and who you are today. But I'm curious if you could give advice to younger athletes, maybe somebody who is, in high school or college age gymnast like you once were. What advice would you give them about how to approach their relationship with food and their body?
I think, first of all, it's to acknowledge it's okay if you don't know how. It's okay. There are people like you and people out there that can help you figure it out. And don't be afraid to ask for help. I think that's the key. Is so many of us are so embarrassed or worried about what's going to look like if I ask for help. And I think that it's not a sign of weakness at all. I mean, I do a lot of Brene Brown stuff about vulnerability is the greatest sign of courage. And I think that if you're struggling and you're confused and you don't have the answers, don't be afraid to ask for help. I think that's key. I also think that it's inevitable not to compare ourselves to others. It's just human nature. We tend to do that. But when you start to dissect and recognize that my constant comparison to self is not improving my self-esteem. It's not making me feel better about myself. You almost need to be like, stop, erase, replace these thoughts, because these thoughts are going to become little patterns in your brain. And then you're going to think they're true, and they're not true. So catch yourself when you know the things you're saying to yourself are not helping you become a better version of yourself. And I think you can talk to someone, you can seek a counselor, you can, just surround yourself around others that are struggling too, because that was the one thing I loved about our programming is you aren't alone. We aren't alone at all. And it's okay to struggle some. It's okay to be, it's okay to be nervous about something. But if you can find a way to not be scared and fearful of it. We just had a speaker the other day, and he after I speak to this gentleman, I feel like I could run through a wall. And one thing he said to me at the team that stuck so well, it's not going to be easy. It just has to be possible. So figuring out what's best for you, fueling wise, food relationship wise, and all of that. It may not be easy, but it's possible. So don't stop striving to get better.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Oh, I love, so it's not going to be easy. It just has to be possible. And I love the other little quote you threw in there when it comes to like negative thoughts and a negative mindset of stop, erase, replace.
Yeah.
I love that. Stop, erase, replace. Replace those negative thoughts with more positive ones, because that's, your mind is just going to keep going down that path over and over again. And you get to choose which path you want your mind to go down. So
yeah, another thing I'll say to myself, if I see I'm going down that path, I'll say, oh no, not today. I say that, not today. I'm not doing this to myself.
Not today, right? Been there, done that. I've been down that path before. I know what it leads to. So not today. I'm going to choose something else.
Not today. And it could be call a friend, go for a walk, do something in that moment so that you don't go down that path. And to me, that's maturity. That's just becoming better at your trade. That's becoming more aware of what you need to do to be able to, rock on with your day.
Yeah. It's beautiful, Dana. So I'm trying to think about any final questions I might have to ask you. Actually, here's one. We touched on you being a mom, and your daughter is a teenager right now, right? Does she ever ask you questions about nutrition, or is how is this going for you, just showing up for her in the space of nutrition? She's developing her own thoughts and behaviors around food.
That's a beautiful question. And, I'm very particular about the words that I use. And the reason is because our words weigh 120 pounds when you're a mama. They're looking at you. And I think I don't want certain words to ever come out of my mouth to my daughter when I am referring to a healthy relationship with food. I think it's terrifying to think that in front of your teenager, you say, I am fat. No, you just can't do that to your daughter, and you shouldn't do it to yourself. And that's a small example. So she, is an athlete herself. She's a teenager, she's on social media, and there'll be moments in time when she will ask me a question. And I just think that my job is to walk next to her in this path. My job is not to put my finger and say, do this, this is what you need. No, I just think that that's not fair to her, because part of her journey is going to be figuring this out. And I can love her. I can support her. I can sometimes maybe help her identify, hey, here's an example is, how did you feel after you had a lot of soda and candy? It's not that you can't have soda and candy, sweetie. The reality is, did you get up way up here and then come crashing down? I want her to experience that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. As you know, Dana, I have clients that range all different ages, but I did recently ask some of my younger clients, how come you couldn't listen to your parents when your parents were giving you advice about what to eat, and one of the biggest things that their feedback to me was, well, it's the hypocrisy, of our parents. Like my mom's saying you need to eat this, well, but she's going on a diet herself, you know? Or my mom is saying candy's good, but then she's saying it's bad for her and makes her fat, So we do have to, I love how you just phrase like, we have to walk alongside, be a role model, but walk alongside, because another feedback I got from my clients was also that, at the end of the day, it's my life. And, think about a 16-year-old saying this, well, it's my life and I need to figure it out myself. So walking alongside is really the answer, as opposed to saying what to do and what not to do, because they do have to learn it for themselves.
Well, I think, isn't that a goal as a parent? If you want to have influence, you have to have a relationship. If you can't find a way to allow them to become an independent thinker, there's a line where all of a sudden, they don't need you putting them in a car seat to get somewhere. There's a line now where they can start making their own decisions, especially when all of a sudden you get a driver and they can go through any drive-through they want to. There's a whole dynamic there where, you want to give them some great things to be thinking about and tools, but you can't be a control freak and control everything, because that can backfire on you as well. So that walking with them, modeling the right behavior. But the other piece to parents, I would say this: if you know you've made a mistake, I think that humility is the most beautiful thing that a parent can share. Is, I made a comment in front of you the other day. I shouldn't have said that, because you know what? First of all, it's not true. Second of all, that's unfair to you. And it shouldn't be the way that I look at things. And so I'm asking for you to show me forgiveness. Let me tell you, that goes miles.
That's beautiful.
Because if I want to have influence, I have to have a relationship. If I want to have a relationship, I've got to be able to help my daughter identify that I love her unconditionally and I want to help her through the process, but I also want to give her the freedom to figure this out along the way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love that. Just being able to expose our vulnerabilities and having honest conversation, right? After all, it's your family and you're trying to build an honest relationship, and being able to admit that is not only helpful for a family member, but I would say helpful for yourself as well. A point of being able to stop and reflect and improve upon yourself too.
Agree. 100%.
Yeah. Well, Dana, I usually end these conversations with a little bit of a rapid fire, if you're open to it, rapid fire questions. So now that you have embraced food freedom fully and really are fueling your body for what it needs, both in performance and in coaching and showing up for your family, if there was one food that you could eat every single day for the rest of your life and never get sick of it, what would it be?
Oh, wow, Lindsay, that's a tough question. Oh, one food, if I could eat the rest of my life, I peanut butter. I love peanut butter and chocolate. Anything peanut butter and chocolate. I love peanut butter. Yeah.
So good. And you already mentioned peanut butter once before. So I just want to highlight, how happy you are to say that, versus probably at one point in time, that wouldn't have been such a fun answer to give, right?
I guess not. Yeah, I know. But I guess what's so exciting is my food palette has become so much more diverse, and it can be an experience. That's what's so exciting. When you go to a fine dining restaurant, let's say, you actually are aware, you're present, and you are enjoying the experience. You run to fast food and pick something up and go home and have it. You can have the same experience with it if you just kind of slow down and are aware and present. I just love that. And of course, I don't want to give away all your secrets, but I really think that there are so many things. The peace plate will be with me the rest of my life.
Oh, beautiful. I'm glad to hear that.
And it works.
Yeah.
It works.
Yeah. Finding what works for you. And these are life-changing nutrition transformations, I think, that we found for you. So it's beautiful. All right. Another rapid fire question. Obviously, you have a strong gymnastics background, but just curious, what is your favorite spectator sport?
Tennis.
Oh, interesting. Curveball.
Mm-hmm. Like, I want to go to the US Open and Wimbledon so bad before in my lifetime. I played tennis when I was an adult. Now, when I became a full-time coach, something had to give because I didn't have time. But I love watching tennis and football. I mean, who doesn't love football?
Absolutely. And then, what about playing yourself? What's your favorite sport to participate in?
Downhill skiing.
Wow. Dana, I didn't know this about you.
I skied my whole life. My dad was a ski patroller. And my entire life, up to the point I was an elite level gymnast, where the national team's like, no, we're not going to be downhill skiing while you're on the national team. I love skiing and favorite. Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. And I'm sure you have many female athletes that you admire, but if you could give a shout out to one female athlete that really inspires you right now, who would that be and why?
Currently, right now, I think Simone Biles is by far the all-time athletes. What she does is out of this world. It is her talent, her ability. I've never seen anything. And that's in the world of gymnastics. I think outside of the world of gymnastics, though, Sabrina from Oregon played basketball. Her story and the connection to relationship with Kobe Bryant and what she's done in the pros and all of that. I think that she shows incredible strength, female empowerment, a fight and a resilience that is totally commendable too.
Yeah. Thank you for giving both of them, Sabrina and Simone, shout outs. They definitely have amazing qualities that we can all learn from and inspire to be like. So, Dana, thank you so much for joining on this conversation and sharing your wisdom and your experiences working together. And we're just so proud of how far you've come and excited to see where, the rest of life takes you with this new approach towards nutrition. The next 20 years will certainly be different than the last.
Thank goodness. And I am so appreciative and grateful for the experience I had with you, and then how I can carry this on to, the next generations in our life. So I have to just say, appreciate you, and thank you for this opportunity.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dana. I really hope you enjoyed that episode, and thanks for listening. But before I let you go, I have free resources that you can have access to right away, right now, so that you can start fueling your body as a fierce, fit, and fueled female athlete. First, I have your Red S recovery race. If you've ever wondered if you might be struggling with Red S, curious to learn more, or know you have Red S and are looking to recover fast, then you can head to www.riseupnutritionrun.com/RedS and download the Red S Recovery Race. See how you place and figure out the next steps to recovery. Plus, while there, I have a few other great resources for you, including 3 nutrition secrets that every elite athlete swears by, and access to a private Facebook community, Female Athlete Nutrition. So again, to gain access to all of this, head to riseupnutritionrun.com/RedS. That's /REDS. And you can gain access and get the help you need fast. Too many girls and women and female athletes struggle with nutrition, but you don't have to any longer. Become fierce, fit, and fueled. Links in the show notes, and I'll see you next time.